So we're just talking, having a conversation about how COVID changed everything in our nation. It impacted so many of our clinics, and we have people that are. It just doesn't, things just don't look the same. And like Mike, how did that impact your church?
Yeah, but that's true, Steve. It impacted us in a few ways. I would say, on the whole, it strengthened us. But I always like to think about, what is God doing in me? What did God do in me? And He definitely deepened my love for people, whether they agree with me or not.
Yeah.
And because part of the polarization is a lack of love. And I'm going to speak specifically for the church here.
Yeah.
Lack of love for each other according to what Christ commands. And so it caused all of us to reevaluate some things. But what it also did was affirm the type of vision that we had, or still have, as a gospel-centered, diverse church. Okay? So socioeconomically, ethnically, culturally, all that. And it emboldened us to keep our eyes on those who, when events like this happen, some people catch a cold, other people catch the flu. So what does it mean to really have a focus on the least of these? So it calls us to really think about some of those things, yeah, and to just trust the Lord for His provision.
Yeah. I mean, did you go through a Gideon's revival in your church during, almost everybody did, or?
Well, first off, we're a Presbyterian church, so at the time we were still a mission church, which means that we didn't have elders installed. Well, we were scheduled to have elders installed in 2020, but then came COVID-19. Well, we went from meeting in a school to full virtual for about 8 months, and then slowly returned with not more than 50 people in the room until, restrictions relaxed. So for us, it really tested the will of our people and the commitment. And I can testify, by God's grace, that our people gave the full vote of confidence. In fact, one of our best months of giving in the life of our church happened that first month we went virtual, which said to me,
people are committed.
We're committed. We're all in.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, Mike, thank you so much for sitting down. You and I've had a couple of times where we've had a chance to just sit and talk, and I've always enjoyed that. I'm really thrilled that you're going to be our opening plenary speaker for the 2024 conference, which is going to happen tomorrow night.
That's right.
And so anyway, thanks for making time. I know you've been traveling all day. You're going to be, you got to be tired, but
it was an honor to be here.
Yeah.
Honor to be here with you, Steve.
Yeah. Last year was your first CCHF conference?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you wanted to come back?
I wanted to, yeah. Last year I had a major surgery December, what is this? In 2020, at the end of 2022.
Yeah.
Get my numbers right. And so I was kind of like hobbling around, but we got back to Orlando, and I gave a report to the board, and I was like, with every fiber of my being, I'm going to try to get back next year for at least one session. Yeah. I just enjoy the spirit here.
I thought maybe it would give you some motivation if we asked you to be a plenary speaker. I really, here's what I love about, and here's why I ask you to be a plenary speaker, is because I know your connection with Grace Medical Home in Orlando. You're a board member. You've been a board member for
I'm in my third term, close to 10 years. Around
almost 10 years.
Yeah, 7, 8 range, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great clinic. We think of it as one of our many flagship clinics. Whenever I'm in Orlando, I always tell them they're my favorite clinic, but I mostly say that to just about every clinic that I visit. So, but when I'm in Orlando, they are. But it is a great ministry there, and I know I know the staff better than I know the board, but. Whenever I talk to the staff, they always talk about how great their board is, and your name always comes up as one of those people that have been really encouraging to them and giving them a lot of strength. And I think you're one of us. And like we're some sort of exclusive group or something.
Hey,
but
you know.
so anyway, I think you've got it. I want whatever it is you've been imparting to Grace Medical Home for you to impart to the rest of our community this weekend at the conference. So let's talk about Grace Medical Home for a minute. Like, how did you get involved with them?
Okay, when I moved to downtown Orlando, I began prospecting for, just meeting people in the community. And I'll spare you the full details, but the arc of it went like this. I went out to lunch with one of the elders at the church where I was working. I said, can you connect me with leaders? And it just was a domino effect. And somewhere in that mix, someone said, so where are you planting this church? I said, South Downtown Orlando. Said, you need to meet Marvin Hardy.
Dr. Marvin Hardy, yeah.
This name keeps coming up. And I was like, is this it's like Grace Medical Home. And I was like, you know what, there's this big thing that happens. And I got invited to it once, but I couldn't go. And so Grace Medical Home just has had such a strong reputation for loving people in Orlando.
Yeah.
And that was my introduction to it from afar. But then when I went to lunch with Dr. Hardy, he was quoting John Perkins, and so I was like, man, who is this? I was like, and we hit it off from there. And he connects me to other people. Long and short, they needed another pastor on the board.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a no-brainer. And believe it or not, Steve, right about that same time, you were in town doing a visit, giving an update on CCHF and talking about just the state of things. And that was one of the kind of, oh man, this is a special place moments when you gave a presentation downtown at CNL building. Yeah.
Well, I have no idea what I said, but I'm glad it worked. So you've been on the board almost 10 years, right? Grace Medical Home's only been around for 13 or 14 years.
Yeah, we're about 14, almost
so
15.
So they had this amazing reputation within the first 3 or 4 years that they were open in a city the size. Orlando's not a small town. That's a pretty amazing thing, really. So what is it about Grace Medical Home? Like, what was it that attracted you? Why did you, was it just they needed a pastor and you happened to be a pastor with a free spot? Or like, what was it about Grace that you thought, man, resonated in you?
Well, they did a very good job. Grace still does a very good job vetting prospective board members. We have trustees that oversee that. And so Grace is very intentional about getting people whose heart aligns with the mission. And when I met some of the key community stakeholders, people that you think, they're just going to maybe be off jet setting somewhere, but no, they are kings and queens in our community, and they have an eye towards the least of these. I was thinking, this is a special place.
Yeah.
Because there are third, fourth generation city fathers and mothers and folks involved with this ministry. And I'm thinking, there's something going on. I got to find out more about this. And that, part of the interview process, I started meeting more people and realizing what the place was about. And I heard the story. And I'd hear the story over and over again. And Grace started with worship.
Yeah.
Grace started with a few people getting together. Well, it started with the Lord gave Dr. Hardy a vision, and it's just been burning ever since.
Yeah. He
reached out to some people, they got together, and they just started worshiping. And so they have gone wherever the glory cloud has gone.
Yeah.
Is one way to put it. And that's what makes Grace so special. They are following the heart of Christ. We follow the heart of Christ, and that's what drew me into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me that you heard Marvin's description of what they were. Do you remember?
He said, Grace is a ministry disguised as a medical practice. And I said, okay, I know what's going on here.
Yeah. but they're not like second rate. Like they are, they named it Grace Medical Home. They were a medical home when other organizations, big organizations, were trying to figure out what a medical home was. And one of the things that has blown me away about Grace from its inception was how many different specialty clinics they run for their patients. So they're like a one-stop shop for their patients. And are they a free? They're a free clinic, right?
Yeah, we're free. We have a very modest facilities fee,
Right.
which, by the way, our patients actually overwhelmingly say yes. They think that's great to do.
Yeah.
But to your point about a one-stop shop, when you read the scripture, Christ cares about the whole person.
Yeah,
All
that's
right?
right.
Ultimately, right, your soul, but it's word and deed.
Yeah,
And when you come to grace, it's hard to miss that.
yeah,
It's very clear that grace cares about the whole person.
yeah. You know, I've known Marvin for really since their inception. We kind of got to know them as they were before they opened the doors. And my daughter used to work there. I don't know if you know that, but
I did not know that.
she did. She worked there. My granddaughter was born there. You met my granddaughter tonight, but she was
Maddie.
born in the Winnie Palmer Hospital, right around the corner from Grace.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but anyway, you know, like Marvin is visionary people attract people of faith, but they attract like people. Do you think of yourself? Are you a visionary guy?
We should dial my wife in and let her answer that question. Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. When did you feel a call to serve Christ like full time?
It happened in college.
Yeah.
The external call came very strong when I was in high school. And I think one of the most precious moments for me when I got licensed in college is a friend of the family who had known me before I was born said we always knew that he was a God child.
Oh, wow.
And I was just thinking, I think of David saying, God has been my God from my mother's womb, Psalm 22. And I definitely feel like God has given me a deep love and passion for people. And then things start happening you don't even realize. It's like God's just setting you up. And then I get to college, and I keep getting placed in these positions of serving people in different ways, people confiding very, delicate information about their lives to me. And then people would ask me if I'm a pastor, and I'd be like, no, I'm not a pastor. I just, a regular person, and I don't want to be a pastor. Well, the Lord laid me out one night in my room.
Yeah.
And some mysterious things happened, and they were confirmed in His Word. And I said, okay, Lord, if you're calling me to vocational ministry, please I don't want to bring any reproach on Christ, and I don't want to make a fool of myself either. And so He was gracious. He just surrounded me with community, older pastors, and just peers who said, we see this.
Yeah. Did you have, who've been, really influential people in your life?
Oh, man. Some of those people are in glory now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my grandfather, he passed in 2020. 12 hours shy of 97. That was one of the sad parts of COVID. But still sharp. I mean, just, he was what I would call the centerpiece of our family. I mean, he held the thing up. My grandmother's still alive, and both of them were very influential. Maternal and paternal grandparents, but I spent a lot of time with my paternal. And there's another guy named Gifford Ramsey. We called him Coach Spanky. He was a trooper. He was a coach. He was one of my high school coaches.
You were a football player.
I played football, yeah.
Yeah.
He taught me how to live, and he taught me how to die. I watched him on his deathbed with cancer.
Oh, wow.
Preaching the gospel to people when they walked in the room. So, just to name a few. Yeah.
There's something special about that. I recently, there's a clinic in Clarkston, Georgia, that serves a lot of refugees, and And I got a call from one of the founders there, and they said, "Look, we've got a medical assistant who's from Sudan, and her pastor lives in Memphis, and he's got pancreatic cancer, late stage. He's about to die." And she came to me and she said, "You know a guy in Memphis that got healed from cancer?" And she said, "I do." And she said, "Would you ask him to go pray for my pastor?" And so, I did get healed from cancer.
That's right.
Not by my faith, because people prayed for me.
Yes.
Honestly, it was their faith. My healing is their testimony. My testimony is I went through a dark time. Jesus was there with me through the whole thing. But I have an African friend who happened to know this guy, and we got a group of African guys together, and we went over to meet with this pastor, and I mean, he was skin and bones, and really right at the end. And I always like to ask people before I pray, like, how would you like for me to pray? And this guy, when I asked him, how would you like for me to pray? And he pulled himself up in bed, and his eyes changed. Like, they just got clear, and he got excited and animated, and he said, "God's given me a vision for a multitude of Cushite people that God is going to pour out a revival, and they're going to spread the gospel throughout my country of Sudan. And not only that, but it's going to go to all the corners of Africa and beyond." And that's a vision God's given me. And there was something, something changed in that room right then. And you just have these experiences where God gives you something that you can't shake, you can't get rid of. So has that been tested in your life? Have you had times where you're like, did I really hear God here, or is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? I mean, how have you walked through that?
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. There's an author, Christian author named Paul Miller, who has written a lot on prayer and suffering, and some of the language that he uses, terms like the J curve, talking about the cycles of life. We got death and then resurrection. Tim Keller would probably be another one who's been super helpful. And then I think just some of the historic African-American Christianity, some of the spirituals that are rooted in a suffering people have given me language for this season of life. Right a few months after my grandfather died, my mom died suddenly and unexpectedly.
Oh, no.
And so in some ways, I'm still in the grieving cycle. I've come to full terms with it, and it's very disruptive, but I definitely felt the Lord's peace. And so you take that, a season of loss, a season of difficulty in a church plant, and just a number of other things. There's enough things that happen in life to make you scratch your head like, oh, have I done something? Am I doing the right thing? Did I hear God correctly? But like you said earlier, Jesus is faithful. He is with us in everything, in all of the valleys of the shadow of death, literally and metaphorically.
Yeah. I'd love to talk about just how, why Grace Medical Homes Board is so exceptional. I don't know, what do you see as kind of the strengths of the board? What I see in Grace when I visit Grace is, first off, medically, they're top notch. I mean, they've got phenomenal doctors that are really committed, that are doing really top quality medical care. And I look at their administrative staff and their leadership, and it's well run from a financial. They have really good finances. They have reserves. You know, they're wise in the way that they use their money and spend their money. They're frugal, but it doesn't look like it. You know, like their building speaks of excellence, dignity. You know, you and I talked about that earlier. You know, and then what's the most beautiful thing about it to me really is walking in the door at Grace. There's just a culture of joy. I mean, people enjoy being there. They enjoy it. They're proud to work there. I'm sure that every day is not awesome, and I'm sure that when I walk in the door, people are on their best behavior. But the truth is, like, they seem to love each other, and they seem to be really dedicated to serving one another. They celebrate each other. You know, like, this is a really healthy culture. It's really good medically. It's really well run, you know, financially. Like, what is the board's role in all of that? Is it just dumb luck, or y'all have been a support and maybe even help them make some corrections along the way to stay that way?
Yeah. So, Steve, I don't want to over spiritualize it.
Yeah.
But we have God sightings at our board, mission moments, stories, and I'm not kidding you. There are times when we just don't know how something is going to turn out.
Yeah.
And God shows up. God does this. We step out on faith. There have even been financial things where we just been shocked. People have found us out and they said, "We heard about you. We want to know more. And by the way, we want to give a gift." Some people have just given large gifts because they know what grace is about. And it just totally catches us out of left field. But then, you know, there's ministry opportunities. You know, for example, the city approached us and like, "Hey, you know, we want to buy this home across the street for Grace Medical Home." And now it's the wellness home where we're going to give attention to mental health.
Yeah.
And so there are clearly some things that you can only that can only be attributed to God's kindness, his provision, his control of grace. But then secondarily, right, so I don't want to over spiritualize it. There are people who've been involved with grace from the very beginning that are pursuing Christ's heart every day on behalf of grace, praying. Yeah. In fact, when we moved into our new building, before we laid the floor, we wrote scripture all around the foundation when it was still just concrete.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is this.
I wrote scripture over there.
I know, I know, Steve. There's like this there's a non-negotiable thought that this place belongs to the Lord, and people treat it like that. Yeah. But God has also provided very talented people who could be working anywhere. Yeah. Gifted folks who could, quite honestly, they're doing okay and they could just go jet set. Or they could have this job or that job, but there's a calling on their life. Yeah. And add to that, we have a broad cross-section of talent. And our executive director, our CEO, Stephanie Garris, second to none. I mean, great. She is just, I've actually learned so much from her about leadership.
She's been a good friend.
And so, I mean, same here, you know, so she's very gifted. And we've got people from multiple industries that help with the operations, that help us think inside and outside of the box. But then we have folks who are committed. So you could have all those. They could be talented. You know, they could be well-known in the community. They could have lots of resources. But if they're not committed to this vision, then it's just not going to make a good board member. Yeah. And so I think all those elements combined make Grace's board very fruitful.
That's terrific. I got one more question for you, and then I know we're already longer than I told you I was going to keep you up. I know you've been traveling all day, but you know, as a pastor, we got 300 and some odd Christian clinics around the country that have some level of relationship with CCHF, and there's a lot of them that don't have really any connections, or they're not satisfied with the connections they have with local churches and things like that. And as a pastor who also knows the inside of these ministries that are masquerading as a health center, like, what should or could a really good partnership look like? I think a partnership has to be reciprocal, but
Sure.
Could you talk a little bit about the benefits for each in those kinds of relationships from a pastor's perspective?
Yeah, well, so I'll say what makes a healthy relationship is the medical home and the church having the same heartbeat for the least of these, right? We're talking Matthew 25.
Right.
So if the medical home just casts a clear vision that we are hands and feet, we're the hands and feet of Christ, and our desire is to care holistically about these individuals, and that could also mean getting them plugged into a local church if they need additional spiritual care. I think those things are very compelling. It helps churches grow from being inward to outward face.
Yeah, that's a
Right.
healthy thing.
So you automatically, if you have alignment with a local ministry that's caring for people in your community that who, by the way, you may not have done a good job caring for, that starts to do something in the heart of people. They're going to have to be confronted with their lack of love, or positively speaking, they'll be affirmed and move towards mission. And then just from a practical standpoint, the secret is this. An old pastor told me once, keep the pastors away from the money because we just give out of compassion, right? We see a need, we give away the money. So the pastor doesn't have the power of purse in most churches. You got to find the missions committee chairman or woman, and you got to find who's heading up the diaconate. Get in contact with the deacons, because that's what part of their charge is, to care for the least of these. And those are practical ways to get alignment with the clinics and with the church. And then also, I think a third component is to invite the churches to be a part of the mission, right? So that there's like this natural relationship that forms. So the church doesn't see, oh, this place is competing with me for whatever reason, right? And I think that and in the same way, you'll want to, as a director, make visits to the church. So Stephanie has been to our church multiple times. Dr. Hardy and Carla frequent our church regularly. We've talked about grace I preached on practical examples of service to the least of these, Grace Medical Home being one of them. I've highlighted them during outreach moments. And then I've been surprised on some Sundays when Dr. Hardy will just show up and I'm like, hey, you didn't know this, but I was going to talk about grace today. And so those are ways that once that relationship gets going, you might find yourself with volunteers from the church.
Yeah.
And then figure out how you can serve the church, you know? And I think that creates a natural relationship that benefits both.
Are there any particularly practical ways that grace has served your church?
Yeah, so one of the biggest ways is high-level relationship, obviously, because I give a lot of time to Grace, and my elders all know that. As we've been working through, we went through a study by Tim Keller called Generous Justice, the late Tim Keller, and we just said, look, this is not just theory. This is real. Here's how it's actually happening in our community. People who love Jesus, love the Word of God, okay, committed to Jesus Christ as our only hope for salvation, are in the community, loving on the least of these, who have been marginalized, overlooked, left out, kicked out, stepped on, trampled over, all of the above. So we don't have to, we don't have to go and dream up ways to do this. God has already set up avenues for us to pursue. And so grace has opened the doors for volunteer opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Hey, thanks for taking time to do this.
Yeah.
I always enjoy our time together. I'm probably making a trip or two to Orlando sometime this summer, and I hope we can maybe grab some time together and just keep fellowshipping. And excited to hear what you're going to bring to us tomorrow night. So I'll let you get back to resting. But thanks so much, brother.
Thank you, Steve.